We have a problem because everyone doesn't see this. Everyone pretends it's not there, or they don't know it's not there. And that is what's in between things. When we learn chords in the beginning of our development, we don't think about this. We don't think about the fact that, yeah, we have to learn chords, right? And we do the C major, we do the G, we do the D perhaps. I don't know what chords you learned in the beginning. But then what we don't see is that the transition from G, right, to C is completely different than the transition between D minor and C. See, D minor looks a lot like C major, right? It has some of, it's like that, right? And that movement of going from, the first finger has to go from here to there, the middle finger has to go from here to there, right? So we have three fingers here, going from one position to another at the same time. And that little pattern of transitioning between one chord to another is one thing. And this is a completely different thing, right? We don't see that. Nobody talks about that. No teacher told me, yeah, you should expect that. You need to focus on the transition, right? As well as just doing the chord. And it's the same thing goes for soloing. Whenever we learn a lick, a sequence, whenever we learn an arpeggio shape, a new scale shape, we learn, for instance, another example is that we learn the minor pentatonic shapes, right? And we play those up and down, and then somebody comes along and tells us, yeah, you got to learn the natural minor shapes as well. Okay, we put those in there, right, all the way up. Somebody comes along, yeah, man, but the cage shapes are kind of limited when it comes to playing really fast sequences. So you need to learn the 3-note per string shapes as well. Right, all the way up, you go all the way up, and you think, yeah, I'm making progress, man, I'm learning all these things. And then, after, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, and you're learning all these shapes, and I know all the scales, yeah, but what can you do with them? Nothing. Right, you can play some impressive sequences, right? But can you use them for soloing? No, because you fail to see what's in between these scales. And what's in between is the connection of the elements we learn. The connection of the chords from one to the other is one thing we can practice. And another is to practice going from minor pentatonic to natural minor anywhere on the fretboard, going from natural minor to harmonic minor, going from harmonic minor to melodic minor, going from one position to another. All that is what's in between, the transitioning between. And that's different every time. And I got, systems for that as well. But that's what we need to be thinking about. So learning scales like that, up and down, in 7 different positions or 5 different positions, depending on what system you're using at the moment, is just a disaster. Literally a disaster, because every time we practice, we must be very focused on what we are practicing our way away from, right? Well, as you're walking down the road and you are walking towards scale mastery, right? What are you walking away from? What's becoming harder and harder to do by the method you have been chosen, or you have chosen, in order for you to learn what it is that you want to learn. And as we practice scale shapes up and down the fretboard, we practice our way away from being able to play solos freely. That's so dysfunctional. You're achieving the opposite of what you want. So what we need to do is that every time we learn something, we must connect it to what we want to use that for. Everything exists in a context. So if I have a lick like, right, I want to integrate that with everything else I have. Right, and right, and what does that remind you of? Taking one thing and developing it, right? Taking one lick and developing it until you have a whole freaking soloing skill, right? Taking one arpeggio and then developing it. And how do we do that in a systematic, very profound, very extremely effective way is that we come up with some simple little building blocks that we can combine into a plethora. That's a word for you right there. of complexity, right? That's the way to do that. So now you can learn very little and get out a huge amount of results of complexity by taking those and then going from one to the other, to the third, to the fourth, right? Connecting those. Now suddenly you can go across the fretboard, right? You can... Right? And what is happening right there? What just happened in my brain is that it fires off patterns. It's developing, it's improvising with patterns. But the patterns are so small that you're not really hearing them as such. It's not like a whole like a whole melody, like, right? That's a lick, right? Right? If that was the pattern, then I will recognize that the next time you play it. It's nothing like that. It's just little movements. Right? That you can then combine across the fretboard. Right? It really makes up for such a... In this course, I have taken, after 40 years of experience, the 1 or 2 exercises per technique, which is sweep picking, legato, alternate picking, economy picking, or directional picking, that will mean more to your development than any other single thing that you can do. So what is actually going on right there is that my brain is combining patterns, and patterns that are pre-learned, but they're so small that you won't really notice them, because it's like building blocks. Do you see each individual building block in a house? No, you don't. You just see the house. You just see the wall, right? That's the same thing that goes here. And that's what every top player does, whether they know it or not. I can take any one solo of any one of the players you look up to, and I can dissect that into patterns and saying this pattern, that, and this and that, and this and this and that. That's what he does all the time. And he combines these little patterns. So in that way, we could take, I might want to do that actually. That's a nice idea. You could take the playing patterns of any top player and dissect them down to its smallest components. Learn the smallest components, learn to combine them, and boom, you can do the same thing. That's how powerful this is, because it's how the brain works. So let's work with the brain and not against it. How can you convert this into action right now? How can you convert, what are you practicing right now where you can be more conscious about what's in between things, so you really see that as its own unique challenge that you need to practice? Right? The in-between. Do you have some things that are disconnected? Like something you can do here, but then you can't combine it with the other thing, right? That work of taking whatever it is that you usually play and then going back and forth and back and forth. You know, let's say you have that whole moldy thing going on, you have some scattered things here. Then what you do is you simply take them and then you go from this to that and from that to this and from this to that. All the time you combine. That's integrating. You might want to have a jam track in the background as you simply go from one to the other, to the third, to the fourth, right? Same thing goes for techniques. You must be able to take your alternate picking skills, combine them with sweep picking skills and economy picking skills, or hammer-ons and pull-offs, legato skills, whether, if you are into those techniques, right? Whatever you do, or your string skipping techniques, right? We need to integrate those so it becomes an integral part of our playing. And that's what this is about. So see you in the next one.